Hello and welcome back to Family Bible Time. Last week we looked at the events of Holy Week. So here's the questions this week. Question number 1. Who betrayed Jesus? The answer is Judas Iscariot. Question number 2. Who was Jesus taken to after seeing the high priest? The answer is Pontius Pilate. Question number 4 is, who helped carry the cross? The answer is Simon of Cyrene. Question number 5. Who were the first people to visit Jesus' tomb? The answer is Mary Magdalene and Mary. Now, whoever got any of those right can get a prize. It's now time for our story. Our story this week is about Jesus appearing to the disciples after he rose again. This can be found in John 20:19 to 31. I have written this in my own words again, so please pay attention. One day, the disciples were in a locked room, all of them but Thomas. Thomas was not in this room. They were all very afraid of the Jews. They were scared the Jews were going to kill them just like they had killed Jesus. Now, we all know, and they did, that Jesus had rose again. But suddenly, Jesus appeared in the room to the disciples, and they were all scared because the room was locked. And Jesus' first words were, "Peace be with you." And he showed them the holes in his hands and the holes in his feet, and his pierced side from where he was stabbed when he was on the cross. Jesus then disappeared after spending some time with them. They all then ran to Thomas and said, Thomas, you won't believe it! Jesus is alive! He really is! We're not dreaming it! Thomas did not believe them. Later on, they were all in a room again, a locked room again. And this time Thomas was with them. Still, they were afraid of the Jews. Jesus suddenly appeared in the room again, and Thomas was scared. The rest of them were, but they knew what was about to happen. Jesus said, "Peace be with you." And Thomas said to him, "I want to see the holes in your hand and the holes in your feet and your pierced side." Jesus held out his hands and showed him the holes in his hands and his pierced side. Thomas then said, "My Lord, you are the Son of God." Jesus then said to Thomas, "Blessed are those who have believed yet not seen, but you have believed because you have seen." And then Jesus disappeared again. And that's our story for this week. So, in our story, we have Jesus appearing to the disciples after he's risen from the dead. And I want us to focus on the second time when Thomas is with them. Now, Thomas is known as Thomas the Doubter. And I find this quite strange, because all the other disciples doubted Mary Magdalene and Mary when they came back from the empty tomb saying, "Jesus has risen from the dead." They didn't all believe. Some of them then believed when they went and saw the empty tomb, and others needed to know, only believed when Jesus appeared to them the first time. Just because Thomas wasn't with them, he's given this title as the doubter. When in John chapter 11, for Lazarus' resurrection, Thomas is the only one that believes that Jesus will do something great with Lazarus. You can read it for yourself. But the other thing to mention is we don't hear much of Thomas after these events. He's not really mentioned in the book of Acts. And that's because he ends up going to India, it is believed, sailing on a ship all the way from Israel to India. Now, arguably, it's the furthest distance to travel from his hometown. And to do that, he has to have had great faith in God and trust in God to be able to do that. So even when we have situations where we don't believe until we see, like Thomas, we can still go on to do great things with God, is what I want us to learn this time. So, I now want you guys to have a discussion at home. And the first 3 questions, as you've probably noticed, are always the same. So I'm going to go through those ones really quickly, but the 4th one is always slightly different. I wonder what your favourite part of the story was. I wonder what your least favourite part of the story was. I wonder what we could take out of the story and still have the whole story. And the 4th question is, I wonder what you would have done seeing Jesus appear in the room. It's now time for our prayer activity. And this week, I want us to use our bedroom doors as prayers. On one side, the way that you go out, you can write a blessing for yourself that you can say each time you leave your room. On the other side, I want you to put a prayer of blessing for yourself each time you come into the room. It can be anything you want, and you can ask your parents to help you do this as well. Thank you very much for joining me this week for Family Bible Time, and I hope to see you next week. Have a great time.